Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. Today we have a very special CMT-Connect webinar um, uh, along the lines of just emotional and um, mental wellness during these difficult times that we're all experiencing together. And we thought we'd bring in some of our favorite people who are experts on this subject matter and who can help us kind of just make a little bit more sense of it and help us build a sense of community and really alleviate some of our concerns and confusing emotions that we're all kind of going through right now. So today, on today's webinar, we have three very special panelists. We have Dr. Nivedita Jerath, who is director of the Neuromuscular Clinic in Orlando at Advent Health. And she has a wealth of experience in CMT patients and is one of our top physicians. So she definitely has a lot to bring to the table. We have Tal Ben-Shahar, who is the founder of the Happiness Academy and Studies. And we also have Dr. Aarti Jerath, who will be joining us shortly as well, who is a child, adult, and adolescent psychiatrist with Miami Counseling Center. So we have a lot of different great minds here. We'd love to get started, and I'll bring it over to you, Dr. Jerath. Tell us a little bit about Advent Health and the work that you do with CMT patients. There we go.
Hey, can you hear me so high?
Yes.
PowerPoint, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to everyone who's here today for this webinar. I'm just so thrilled to be here with all of you today. So I thank you, Estella. My name is Dr. Nivedita Jerath. I'm the Neuromuscular Director at Advent Health Orlando. And I'm just so thankful for the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation for hosting this webinar, as well as Advent Health Orlando. You can see our team. They're just wonderful, and just the beginning of a great neuromuscular team. So the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation has been working closely with us, as well as our superb team here at Advent Health. Not only did they arrange this webinar, but they've also designated us as a center of excellence. And we're so appreciative of this designation and hope to uphold this excellence at the highest level of multidisciplinary care for our patients with hereditary neuropathies. One thing that we wanted to say was that we were so proud of this Center of Excellence that we wanted to celebrate this center with a Movement is Medicine conference. And we had, I think, about more than 150 patients with hereditary neuropathies, their families, their friends coming to Orlando. We were going to have a great amount of fun. We were going to learn about exercise and meet each other. But unfortunately, this event got postponed. So today is a bittersweet day for me. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for the coronavirus. Everything has been canceled. We are undergoing a lot of social isolation. Everyone has been disappointed because of the cancellations of almost everything. I mean, this is cancellations of graduations and parties, and even our doctor's appointments have canceled. So things have been very hard for us, let alone the Movement is Medicine conference. So it's sweet because of one thing, all of us are together. We have learned how to cope, and we're all going to learn today how to deal with this difficulty. And I think it's not just for our patients, it's for everyone to learn how to find happiness during these difficult times. My patients with hereditary neuropathies, we have quite a few here in our clinic in Advent Health in Orlando. They deal with many issues, but some of them include difficulty with mobility, so they have difficulty walking, balance, pain, fatigue, anxiety, depression, and at times social isolation. And what do you think this coronavirus did? It just made things worse. So now we have more social isolation. We have cancellations of everything. We have fear and anxiety just due to the coronavirus itself. And things have just gone worse. And so you can see that arrow It's a bad cycle. Things are feeding back and forth, unfortunately, making things worse for our patients. So what we decided, all of us, and we thought, because happiness is one of my passions, alongside my medical career, I've decided to study, and I really enjoy studying happiness. Uh, Thought about giving this therapeutic seminar for all of you. Although I'm not an expert, I always have thought that happiness is a choice. It's a decision that I try to make daily. Happiness is something that's in my control, in my power, but that's not easily done. It's easily said, but not done, and it doesn't apply to everyone. So we're going to talk to some experts next. I wanted to introduce the two experts. We have Dr. Aarti Jerath, who happens to be my twin sister. She is a psychiatrist. She works at Miami Counseling and Resource Center. She provides excellent support and care for her patients. Sometimes she will counsel me, so a 5-minute conversation will turn into an hour. And I'm really blessed to have that support from her in all her care. And also Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, he is a professor. He was my professor at Harvard University and led one of the most popular classes at Harvard on happiness. That class definitely changed my life. So I hope you enjoy their sessions, which hopefully will change your life as well or have a great impact on you. Both Aarti and Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar excelled in racket sports. Aarti was a nationally ranked tennis player, and Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar was a national squash champion. And all of us went to Harvard. So hopefully you enjoyed their sessions today. And Aarti will be following me, and then Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar will follow.
All right, so let's skip ahead. I know we're going out of order here, but while we get the slides taken care of, let's kind of speak a little bit here with Tal and a little bit about the work that you're doing. As Neve mentions, she was one of your students at Harvard, and especially she spoke highly of your class on happiness, which was one of the most successful classes there. So I know this is kind of a new field of work that's emerging and especially getting a lot of attention now. So tell us a little bit about the work you do.
Yes, so my field, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this. You know, many people ask me now about my field, the science of happiness. Is it even relevant now? Shouldn't, you know, they would say something like, shouldn't the science of happiness be quarantined until this coronavirus affliction is gone? And, you know, it's a good question. It's an important question. Their argument is that, you know, happiness is for good times, not for difficult times. The answer, though, to their question is that, no, it shouldn't be quarantined, that it's important now as it is important in good times, that it's as relevant, perhaps even more relevant for dealing with challenges and difficulties than it is for dealing with, you know, with easier life circumstances. And the reason why it's so important is because the science of happiness contributes to our ability to go from an okay state to a better state. It's also very much helpful for us to dealing with difficulties and hardships. Why? Because what the science of happiness does, and this is what I'll speak about shortly, what it does is it strengthens our immune system. In other words, it makes us more resilient. Now, immune system physically, physiologically, as well as psychologically, mentally. And of course, the two are connected. So the science of happiness, yes, is great for getting us from here to better. It's also great for dealing with things when they're not going well. In fact, all the research shows that it's even more important during these difficult times.
So I know this is, a question that comes up a lot. How do we, I think one of the reasons why this webinar is so important is because we as CMT patients are basically always in this state of a lot of the emotions that are kind of magnified now during such a pandemic. So, we're already living with the fear of progression. We're already living with anxiety and isolation and loneliness. And now it seems like, this is just another kind of hit to all of those emotions. So how do we kind of, still respect our emotions, but at the same time, try and get ourselves in a healthier mental, and emotional state while still kind of, not necessarily being naive to everything that's going around.
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, it's about acknowledging that it's challenging. It's challenging going through these times. It's challenging, living with a chronic illness. It is challenging. The first step is acknowledging the challenge. Unfortunately, there is no silver bullet that can make all the pain and suffering and hardship go away. When we're talking about an immune system, a strong immune system, we're not talking about an immune system that exempts us from feeling these painful emotions. What we're talking about is an immune system that allows us to better deal with the difficulties when these arise. So a strong immune system doesn't mean we don't get sick. It means we get sick less often. And when we do get sick, we recover more promptly. So this is basically the aim of the field of the science of happiness, not to eliminate, get rid of painful emotions. That's not possible. It's to better deal with them when they arise, which they will.
Right.
They do.
Are there any practical ways of kind of integrating this mindset into our daily routine and some actual activities? I know a lot of us are glued to our screens and watching the latest updates and numbers and news and press conferences. So, is there a limitation to that we should really, consider? What's the fine balance there between being informed and then still kind of keeping that space for ourselves?
Yeah, so I will, this is one of the points that I do want to talk about in my presentation, but to perhaps provide a little bit of a preview of things to come. Distraction is not necessarily a bad thing. I was in preparation for this presentation, I was looking for quotes. As you'll see, I'm a big fan of quotes. I was looking for quotes on distraction. And every quote that I encountered, and I must have looked at hundreds, every one of them had a negative connotation. For example, you'll get distracted and you won't get to your dreams. Distraction leads you to be less efficient. Distraction is the plague of the 21st century. Daniel Goleman, the emotional intelligence scholar, talks about this being the age of distraction. And he's not saying the age of distraction, oh, it's a wonderful thing. It's a criticism of our times. And yet distraction is not always bad. Distraction has its upsides. And because when we are not distracted and we're constantly focused, zoomed in on the issues at hand, it actually hurts us, both psychologically and physiologically. So distraction in moderation is
right. Right. Agreed. Okay. All right. So we'll leave it at that as like a little teaser for what's to come with your presentation, because I know you have a lot more to show us, and we're going to kind of try something different. I know, Neve, you have some slides there from Aarti that you wanted to share.
Thank you, guys. It's such an honor to be here with the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation and with my twin sister and everybody that's put this together. Allison has also been very supportive. Everybody has been supportive, so thank you. And Tal Dr. Shahar has been here as well. I'm really looking forward to presenting the slides. So basically today, I really want to talk a little bit about how to cope with a chronic illness, as well as with coronavirus, because basically there's similar ways to cope with both, and similar techniques that you would use that we'll discuss about that can help you with both things. And I went over my overview, but I'll go over it a little bit again. When you do get something like a chronic illness or a setback or something like this coronavirus, new feelings come up. And, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about getting support, and we'll also discuss mindfulness. I don't know if a lot of you guys have heard of mindfulness. I'm sure you have, but a lot of us don't really know what it means or how to use it in our everyday lives. And if you do know, and I'll show you how to use it, it can help us manage stress, be more involved in our healthcare, keep things in perspective. It's also useful in a spiritual way. And other techniques that we can use are finding gratitude in our situation. And one thing that I tell all my patients, is to be our own best friends. Anytime something new arises that we don't understand or that is challenging. So the first thing that we need to understand is ourselves. How are we feeling? We have to be courageous and admit our feelings to ourselves. What is it? Are we stressed? Are we scared of this coronavirus? That's what I hear a lot from my patients, is that they're feeling a lot of anxiety with the coronavirus. Are we feeling sad? Are we feeling frustrated? Maybe we're feeling lonely. And that's okay to have these feelings. And if we do, we should accept them the way they are. These are our feelings. And I talked a little bit about this already, but again, all of us have different temperaments and ways we cope. Some of us are very laid back, and it's easy for us to cope with change or difficulties, whereas others are more type A personalities. They really have a hard time with change or setbacks or things that happen to them. And learning who you are can make you stronger and can help you find an inner resilience that you didn't have before. So first thing is, of course, to get support. Whether something's happened to you that's a virus or a chronic illness, we need to get good medical care. And I'm very proud of my twin sister, Nivedita Jerath, who's an excellent neurologist at Advent Health right now in Orlando. Many people drive all over the country to go see her. She's booked, I think, for a couple of months out. So if you can get an appointment with her, you'd be really lucky. But I do recommend that if you can. It's also important to find a good support group. Wherever illness or whatever condition you might have, find other people that have the same condition. And this Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation is doing an amazing job doing that. They're creating this organization for people to join and to have support with others who have neuropathies or Charcot-Marie-Tooth or whatnot. It's also important to reach out to your family and to good friends, people who make you happy, who support you, who uplift you. And it's important to let go of other relationships, people that put you down or hurt you and don't make you happy. It's also important to get someone to listen to you. And I believe the next speaker, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, will be speaking about his happiness course. And I recommend that also as another way to get support. And he'll be giving you a lot more information about his happiness course and seminar. Also, so if you've done all that and you still feel sad and you still feel like you can't function, and you can't function at home, you can't function at work, then you might need to see a psychiatrist or get therapy. And what happens next is perhaps you might benefit from getting on psychotropic medications, and that's what psychiatrists do. They treat depression and anxiety, and most commonly they use SSRIs. And some of the most common ones that are used are Prozac, Zoloft, Lexapro, Celexa, Paxil. These are very commonly used to help people that have depression that's getting too much for them. Also, there are SNRIs, which are serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, like Effexor and Cymbalta, that can be prescribed if you have too many symptoms of depression and you can't handle it. Other methods are transcranial magnetic stimulation or electrocranial ECT, and those two methods are always used if you need to, if the medications don't work. electrocardiogram. So if you have ADHD, you can use stimulants to help you. I don't know if you guys have heard of Adderall or Vyvanse or anything like that. But those are used for ADHD or even Ritalin. And if you can't sleep, we use over-the-counters like Benadryl or melatonin, and sometimes we prescribe trazodone, or other medications to help you sleep. And other modalities are therapy, like individual therapy, talk therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, narrative therapy, supportive, group, or even family. And we use coping and CAT therapy for high schoolers. That's a method that we use to treat anxiety in high schoolers.
So it doesn't involve cats.
Right, it's very commonly used. You can even buy the book online, the Coping Cat book online. That's very, very commonly used. And I know that, so I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist, so I treat both adults and children. So I wanted to give a message and a message of support for high school students. Social anxiety is very common among adolescents, and so is panic disorder. So a lot of times children who have chronic illnesses, who are faced with, some sort of setback or disease in high school, they can feel like they don't have friends. They can feel humiliated. They can feel bullied, especially because they might feel different from others. But if that's the case, it's important not to keep it a secret. And to tell people, because classmates, teachers, they will be understanding, especially if you explain to them. Just like we all have different eye colors, some of us are more prone to having different diseases, and that helps them contextualize you as a whole. And for those that are bullied, that's just not tolerated. I mean, it's very important to tell children to tell their parents if they're being bullied. And parents should tell the teachers and principals to get involved and to help the child overcome that, whether putting the bully in a different class or, penalizing the bully or putting them in a different area. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely, I know this is something that a lot of children deal with. I think anyone, even myself included, growing up, I wasn't, bullied often, but there were a lot of times where children make really rude comments. And I think a lot of the issues too that kind of are connected with CMT is it's a lot of times it's an invisible disease. So, the child is not necessarily in a wheelchair, and it's very, noticeable that they have a disability, but sometimes it's just a little awkward gait and they have floppy feet, or their handwriting is sloppy and they hold things in a different way, can present itself almost like, in a unnatural way that's not necessarily correlated to a particular disease. So I think educating the teachers, a lot of times, we've had instances where the teachers don't recognize that the child has a disability and they don't understand what CMT is. So, H&F, that's something that we've tried to really support families with, we have Arlene on the Scene, which is a series of books that teaches, students about just through the story of a teenage girl living with the disease. We have doctors that we can connect parents to if they need, a written letter to the teacher, just explaining what CMT is and things like that. So, if any parents out there are struggling with this with their children, I know obviously their children are home right now, but it's always an opportunity to educate the students as well as the teachers, and the burden always shouldn't have to fall on the student or the child to defend themselves against, all these students and people who don't understand what the disease is. So, I think a lot of times when people are educated and they know that this is a disease and the science explains to them, it makes it for a much more pleasant experience for everyone. And, there's always room to educate children and adults alike.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well said. Well, very well said. And absolutely, especially, in those cases, it's very important that they have those techniques and coping mechanisms to help a child, especially when they feel different in a school setting,
Right.
and they don't feel the same as they used to. So that can be really challenging for them.
Yeah.
To let the teachers know that there's a change in their life. They're not the same athlete they used to be.
Right.
It's very important.
Yeah.
So very well said. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
And also a message to parents too, especially parents of children with chronic illness. It's very important for them to listen to their children, to support their children, and just to be understanding parents more than anything else, more than trying to cure the illness or get over involved in everything that the child is doing, because that can stress the child out.
Right.
So it's important just to listen and be supportive. Also, parents, shouldn't really give in to saying, oh, no more school, you have an illness, you don't have to go to school. It's important to normalize things for the child as much as possible.
Right.
So that's good. The next thing I'm going to talk about is mindfulness. I'm sure a lot of people who are on this call have heard of it. They might even know it and practice it, but some of us don't really know what it is. And so I want to share some very basic examples of it. Mindfulness is being in control of our minds rather than having our mind control us. It's sort of having a strong mind that is aware of this present moment that we're in right now on this phone call, talking to everybody on the Zoom video, and not having any judgment and not trying to change it. Just let it be. And Dr. Linehan has written a lot of stuff about mindfulness in her DBT skills training manual. I really like how she breaks it down and makes it very simple. So I'll use some of the information from her. And one of the things she does talk about is how does mindfulness help us? It really helps us slow down. It helps give us choices. It helps us focus. It helps us think before we act, especially if we're making important decisions. It can even help reduce our pain, our stress, and improve our health. And some people claim that it even helps our compassion, our sensitivity toward others. So, it's an important technique and tool to use. And she breaks mindfulness down. She says there's different types of mind. One type of mind is the emotional mind. It is our mind, that is ruled with emotion and impulses. For example, we see an ice cream shop and we want to eat ice cream and our emotions run wild. We're hungry and it's really exciting for us to eat it. We love ice cream and we get emotional. Our emotional mind is like, oh, let's go get some ice cream. So our reasonable mind is ruled with facts and logic. And so they would tell us, no, it's not right. We'll gain weight. It ruins our health. Ice cream is not good for you. So that's our reasonable mind. And then the wise mind is it's the inclusion of both, the reason and emotion. It helps us think very clearly when we are emotional. It's the way we can make good decisions. So when we want to eat ice cream, and we think, oh my gosh, we can't. We say, hey, maybe if, we've worked out and we exercise and we feel like we're, as a treat, maybe once a week or once a month, we can have a little bit of ice cream in moderation. So it is the wise mind. So that's what she describes, and I really like that. And every day, there are simple techniques and ways to be mindful. We can just simply observe the surroundings around us using our 5 senses. We have to stay in the present moment. We just let our thoughts happen, even when they're painful. And that's just the most simple way to just be mindful and to practice that. The next way is to just really just describe what we're seeing outside ourselves, and do it in a factual way without any judgment. Instead of saying, the person was really rude to me, you say, that person is rolling her eyes, speaking loudly. So that is a very factual way of describing something. And that's another way to be mindful. And the next way is what she describes as participate. Basically, throw yourself into this moment right now as we speak. Don't think about the past, don't think about the future, just think about right now. You can do that by dancing right now, by working right now, and you become one with this moment as we speak. You hear every word I'm saying, and you're one with it, and you get what is into the zone. I don't know if you've heard that phrase.
Yeah, into like the flow state, right? Kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
Like athletes, like professional basketball players, professional, athletes, or musicians, whatnot. They all get into the zone.
Yeah, you just get lost in the moment, kind of.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I had a question regarding, you're talking about observation. I know a lot of us are empaths, and we're on social media and we're talking to friends, and somebody might be in the hospital or sick or passed away. And how do we? I mean, I think it's a lot of times it's easier said than done, because I know a lot of us tend to kind of absorb other people's emotions, and we'll have a conversation with someone and we'll kind of feel sad afterwards. So how do we still be sensitive to others while kind of separating our own emotions from others?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question, and that's what mindfulness does. It helps you able to sort of separate that. Like, the more you feel the present moment, I'm not saying you should completely disregard the feelings that social media gives you,
right?
But the more you sort of let that come into your being and then let it flow away, sort of like gently, okay, that did come through, it felt sad, I acknowledge that, and then let it flow through and start thinking like other thoughts, other observations, sort of this ability to control your mind, and able to just let it flow, those thoughts that you got from the social media flow away. Understand, you're able to control your mind, not to be able to fight it, to judge yourself for it, or to get angry at social media, or
right.
judge social media. To sort of an ability to control your mind and say, well, I understand those feelings are coming from there. I understand they're there. I acknowledge that. But right now, this is where I am, and this is my moment, and I'm going to get into my own moment right now.
Right. Okay.
Whether it's reading or being, in the moment, your own present moment, whether you're working, dancing, exercising, so you get into your own flow. So, and that's the strength of mind. Then you practice mindfulness, those things really will not bother. You'll be able to strengthen your mind that they won't come through. You'll be able to kind of tell your mind where you want that focus, where you want the energy, where you want to put your energy into. So that's the beauty of mindfulness. So
okay.
So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that definitely helps. So I mean, the key is really try and come back to the present moment as often as possible.
Absolutely, and focus is very important. Like, whatever you're focusing yourself on, it really does help you get to that. Like, goals, whatever your energy is being put toward. You really have to. And another thing about mindfulness is it tries to tell you not to think of two things at once. You can only do one thing at a time. Like, if you're listening to this webinar, that should be your only focus. That should be where your mind is, and it should be present and absorbing all this information and knowledge. So, and over time, you'll recognize what is most important to you, what you really need to focus on, versus these peripheral things that really are there, but they don't come into your own presence and your own happiness and your focus and what you want to do at the moment. So yeah, so that's part of it. And that brings us to the next thing. And I hope that makes sense. I hope that's clear. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually do a practice. We're going to practice for about a minute to do mindfulness today. And this is something I really enjoy doing. I taught a DBT class for about a month to 3 months. And so every day we had to start everything with a mindfulness exercise. And one of my favorite ones was this one, was to focus on the happiest moment of your life. To take 1 minute, and we're going to take 1 minute and we're going to focus on one of the happiest moments we've had in our life. We basically will, what you're going to do, and we're going to start in just a couple of seconds. We're going to bring our attention to that moment using every sense we have, our vision, our smell, our hearing, our taste, touch, everything. And we're going to smile during this exercise because that can help us become happier. And every time our mind wanders, whether it's to that Facebook energy or social media energy, we're going to come back to our thoughts to that happy moment. And if you keep practicing this, it'll help you become really strong. So I'm going to give everybody about a minute right now to start this. So everybody close your eyes. This is your moment to really take a minute out of your day just to think about the happiest moment you've ever had, and just take some deep breaths and really go into this moment, and remember it as best as you can. Recreate it in your mind. So I'm going to start now. So that was just like an example. I'd like you to get back to thinking about the webinar and everything else, but it was just an example. And if we had more time or more abilities, I would love everyone to share what that moment was. But really, just that's kind of what mindfulness is. It's sort of just taking that mind, taking your mind off of everything and just focusing on a happy moment. So now I'm going to really talk a couple more techniques on how to use mindfulness to cope with a chronic illness or coronavirus. The first thing is, managing stress. Stress is always going to be there, but it's how we manage it, and what best works for us to help us be less stressed. Some people find that exercising, stretching, helps them better. And if that's the case, that's what you should use when you're stressed. Some people find that music, deep breathing, meditation, or even the mindfulness that we just did is the best way. And whatever works for you, you should do it. A really interesting mindfulness technique is to basically write in a journal. And I'm sure people have heard of that. They've heard, we should write in diary entries and whatnot, or write in a journal every day. But it really is a good technique because people don't realize that if you can use your own setbacks and even your accomplishments, and they make great stories. Mm-hmm. And you can even write a book if you wanted to. It's very interesting how that could be a way to manage stress. It's a mindfulness tool, and it can also result in a book that you could write for yourself or for other people. Also, cooking helps with stress. For some people, reading, watching movies, spending time with their family or friends, or just having me time. Another way to sort of cope with any sort of illness or this whole coronavirus or whatnot is basically to give support. If you want support, you should be able to give it as well. And helping others can make you feel better too. Giving is a form of uplifting your spirit. It's also a form of good karma. I don't know if anyone has heard of karma, but it basically, philosophy is that you get what you give, basically.
Right.
And it's also a form of universal love. So giving support can also help you as well to cope. Another thing for anyone who has a chronic illness or, who has something new in their lives medically is to have them get involved in their healthcare, which can help them be in control, to learn about their illness, just to ask questions, to understand how they feel. And when you're involved in your healthcare, it's also important to stay very consistent and compliant with your medications and your healthcare regimen. And in general, perspective is also important. You are not just your chronic illness. You're not just, the coronavirus is not everything.
Right.
It's part of a much bigger sphere. And another technique of mindfulness that I encourage everyone just to try is something called projective visualization. I don't know if anyone has heard of this. It's very unique. Basically, if you have a setback or something that came to you unexpectedly that was challenging, try to visualize that or imagine that someone else is having that. Not that you want other people to have it, that's not what you're saying, but you're visualizing, you're imagining that someone else has it. And basically it gives you that a different perspective that's a little bit more objective. And it can also, any sort of pain or emotion that you're feeling, it can make them more objective, can make them less. And it gives you the feeling, it's happening to someone else. Maybe what would I tell that person? How would I comfort them and be more compassionate with that other person? And then you can turn that around to your own self.
Right.
So it gives you just a different perspective, and we call video game framing, where you imagine the setback happening to someone else, and that can make you a little stronger, more resilient. Just try it. See how you feel with that. See what it does for you. That's very important. I don't know if anyone's ever done that. That was very unique. Unique technique of mindfulness. You can also make any sort of challenge or setback a spiritual journey. If you are religious, and I don't know if everyone is, some people are, they can use religion, which according to one of my psychiatry professors, is a man-made cognitive behavioral therapy that we use to cope. Religion can help us get through really difficult times. You can also use mindfulness, meditation, and just focusing on this present moment. And just a reminder for those of us who have dreams, or anybody with a chronic illness or setback or anything with dreams, that they should not give up trying to create a family. It's very important to have your goals and to keep a purpose in life. And mindfulness can help you reach your dreams, keep you the present moment. It's a good technique to use to get to your dreams. And even though you don't want to give up your dreams, you do want to tell yourself that you have a new measuring stick now, and when one door closes in your life, another one opens. If you have a little bit of setback or challenge in your life, you can do different things. Now with this coronavirus, people are stuck at home. They can't really go out too much. Makes it an opportunity to read more books, right? So, one door closes, the other door opens. And all through this, we should find gratitude, write down your blessings, appreciate them. Another mindfulness technique is negative visualization. It's when you imagine how much worse your life would be if you didn't have what you already have. Imagine 100 years ago, we didn't have all the technologies of our cell phones, our computers, our TVs, our cars, Siri. We didn't have that,
Right.
massage chairs, and now we do. And we're still, the same percentage of people are depressed.
Right.
We're not any bit happier as a whole. And so let's take for a second for imagine that we're 100 years ago, we didn't have all that stuff. And that really helps us appreciate what we do have now and all the technologies, and maybe it can make us more happy as a population as a whole. So we're trying to find gratitude with negative visualization. Everyone should try that as well. And last but not least, I tell all my patients this. It's from the Gita, which is Hinduism, it's a spiritual book in Hinduism. It's to be our own best friend. We are our best friends. There's pretty much let's not be our enemy to ourselves. Whatever happened to you, whether it's this coronavirus, a chronic illness, a setback, it's probably not your fault. Most likely it isn't. You didn't have any control over it. And it's very important that you recognize that. And you have to be nice to yourself. You have to be gentle to yourself. Sometimes you might need someone to help you with cooking, cleaning, just, whether it's family member, friend, or even a service organization, you can ask them for help. And I recommend you to use your senses, your sense of vision, smell, your touch, your hearing, anything like that, your taste, to make you happy. Every day, do something that makes you enjoy living life, whether it's enjoying a little bit of ice cream and dessert, or smelling your favorite perfume, which really works for me. And even through residency, that helped me get through residency, is to smell my favorite perfume, or petting your favorite animal, or going for a walk, or watching a funny movie, or just being by yourself in your own peace and bliss. Be your own best friend. And I want to thank everyone for this. Dr. Nivedita Jerath, of course, my twin sister, who's an amazing neurologist at Advent Health, Miss Allison Moore, who reached out to me to invite me to this talk. Estella Liligo, thank you so much, Estella, for organizing this and coordinating this. And Miss Courtney Hullett, and everyone in the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, of course, the Miami Counseling Center, which I work at, and everybody, and the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for letting me talk.
Thank you so much for that as well. I think there's a lot of great and valuable information in your words and the work that you do in your slides. Where can people reach you if they want to speak more with you about these any personal things that they're going through right now?
The Miami Counseling Center is the best way to reach me.
Okay.
The number is 305-448-8325, and if you call them, they get you a way to reach me. And I don't know. I think we'll be giving some promotions as well after the talk.
Yes.
So,
if you'd like to make that announcement now, I'm sure. Well, we'd be more than happy to.
Offer every official for patients to see if they need medications or therapy. Just tell them you were at this happiness webinar, and we could do that. And then I'll work with you afterwards. And
Great.
Just call the Miami Counseling Center. You can even find their number online, and just that'll be the best way to get in touch with me.
Yes.
So
Thank you so much.
Yes, and I look forward to the next presenter, who's amazing. So
thank you. And we'll be posting the phone numbers and links in the email that we send out to everyone afterwards. So if you missed any of that, don't worry, we'll be sending that and sharing that shortly. So thank you so much. Okay, so I guess Ben, if you want to Tal, if you want to take it from there.
Sure. Hi. So I will also share my screen.
Great.
Now, what I'm going to do is reinforce many of the ideas that Dr. Aarti spoke about, because a lot of the advice that we get today, whether it is from psychiatrists or psychologists or sometimes even politicians, much of the advice is very sound. I think one of the biggest challenges for us is to be able to identify those things that we can connect to. And as Dr. Aarti mentioned, you may connect to some and not to others. So I'm going to present you with the ABCs of psychology, and specifically as they relate to resilience. Now, the ABCs of psychology are a tool or a framework to help us bring about lasting change. The A stands for affect. Affect is emotion. It is the affective mode would be about feelings. It's associated usually with the heart. So there are many things that we can do using our heart, our emotions, our feelings to bring about change. The B of the ABC stands for behavior, has to do with our actions, what we do, and it's associated generally with the body. And the C would be about cognitions, thoughts, it's about our faculty of reasoning, it's about using our mind. And under each one of the ABCs, I will talk about 2 techniques, so a total of 6 techniques. Again, there is a fair amount of overlap with Dr. Aarti, which is important, because what you need to do is obviously understand these interventions, but more importantly, experiment with them, try them out. You know, I'm a big fan, as my students know, I'm a big fan of biographies. And one of my favorite biographies is Mahatma Gandhi's. And the biography, the subtitle of it is My Experiments with Truth. It's not my finding truth. It's not my having reached the truth, discovering that. It's my experiments with truth. And this is what we urge you to do, to experiment and try these things. They're all evidence-based. Obviously, there's a great deal of science behind each of the recommendations, but ultimately, more important than research is me-search. In other words, you applying, trying, experimenting. Without further ado, let me move on to the A of the ABCs. So the A, affect. The first technique that I'd like to talk about is what I've come to call the permission to be human. The permission to be human is essentially about giving yourself the permission to experience the full range of human emotions. Because, you know, we spoke about this earlier. Dr. Aarti spoke about this. You know, these times, especially, are times that bring out very extreme emotions. So it could be an extreme emotion of fear, more so than usual. It could be an extreme emotion of frustration, you know, where many of us are locked up. You know, my kids are right here. They didn't go to school today, or for the past 3 weeks, for that matter. And, you know, there are a lot of tensions that are mounting, much more so than usual. The key is to give ourselves the permission to experience these extreme emotions. And by the way, extreme emotions are not just painful emotions, because emotions also become more complex. You know, I just spoke to a friend of mine who is living in Switzerland, in the mountains, and he said, you know, I must say, I'm quite happy. And, you know, he said it apologetically. Because he said, you know, I'm here with my wife, you know, our kids are out of the house, and, you know, we're discovering one another again. And, you know, I'm quite happy. And then, you know, a minute later, he says, and I feel guilty about it. You know, we feel grateful maybe because we're doing okay. And then we feel guilty about it because other people are not doing okay.
Right, absolutely.
And the key is to allow ourselves to experience every emotion, pleasurable, painful, muted, extreme, whatever comes. Why? Because you see, when we reject emotions, and this is especially pertinent to painful emotions, when we reject painful emotions, they intensify, they grow stronger. So, for example, if I say to myself, you know, Tal, you're the happiness professor, you shouldn't be anxious now. You should have the tools to deal with that. You know what will happen? My anxiety level will skyrocket.
Right.
Whenever we reject an emotion, a painful emotion, it intensifies. So this is the first thing that happens. When we allow it to flow through us, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It comes in, it goes out. You know, in Buddhism, there is a lot of talk about 2 levels of suffering. And over the years, modern research has actually verified this. So the 2 levels of suffering are as follows. The first level is natural. We all experience suffering at one point or another for one reason or another. So that's one level of suffering. Natural, it comes and it goes. The second level of suffering comes when we reject the first level. When we say to ourselves, don't be anxious, or don't be nervous, or don't be afraid, or don't be frustrated, don't be angry. And then that second level of emotion is built on the first. The first is inevitable. The second is a choice. And we can make the choice to accept the emotions, and then they will come in and they will go. This is the natural flow. There's a second reason why accepting painful emotions is critical. And that is because we have one emotional pipeline, not 2, but 1. All of our emotions, no exception, flow through that one pipeline. Now, if I block one set of emotions, such as the painful ones, and do not, or try at least not to experience fear, then I'm blocking the whole pipe, meaning I'm not allowing the pleasurable emotions to flow through me. You know that people who block, for example, envy, are less able to experience love. People who block fear are less able to be courageous. People who block anxiety are less able to experience excitement. One pipeline. In the words of Israeli Prime Minister from the 1970s, Golda Meir, she said, "Those who don't know how to weep with their whole heart don't know how to laugh either." One pipeline, two sides of the same coin. Give yourself the permission to be human. It's really the foundation, by the way, not just for dealing with difficult times, for resilience. It's really the foundation of a happy life. Because paradoxically, if we want to experience true happiness, we need to first allow in unhappiness.
Is that similar to the power of vulnerability?
Yeah, exactly. So Brene Brown's work is critical. It's so fundamental to a full and fulfilling and authentic
Right.
life. And how do we do that? So Dr. Aarti spoke about a few techniques. So one way to allow the emotions to flow through us is mindfulness. Because what are we doing with mindfulness? It's non-judgmental, present moment awareness. Whatever emotion comes in, bring it on. Mindfulness is one. Another is talking about it, whether it's talking to our favorite twin sister or whether it's speaking to a therapist or whether it's writing about it. This wonderful work done by Jamie Pennybaker, U of T, on the value of journaling. So journaling, talking about it, or simply crying, shedding a tear, allowing the emotions to flow through us. So that's giving ourselves the permission to be human. The next effective intervention associated with emotion, again, Dr. Aarti spoke about this, expressing gratitude. There's a lot of research on it showing that expressing gratitude, whether it's keeping a gratitude journal, whether it's around the table, we do it regularly. Even though sometimes tensions are high with, my wife, myself, the 3 kids quarantined, we go around the table and express gratitude. We sometimes do it on Zoom with the grandparents and or write it down. Now, one of the basic premises of my field, of the science of happiness, is that there is always something to be grateful for. Even if it's something small, it doesn't matter. Go for those small wins. Find those silver linings as small and almost invisible as they may be. You can identify them. Now, why is that so important? Because what expressing gratitude does is it potentially launches an upward spiral. Why? Because let's say, I'm going through a hard day. There have been many of them over the last few weeks. I go through a hard day, and then I think of one thing that I'm grateful for, just like that 1 minute of thinking about a happy experience. One thing that I'm grateful for. I immediately feel a little bit better. Now, if I feel a little bit better, I'll be a little bit nicer to my child, perhaps, or I'll have a little bit more energy to do work, and that will lead to another positive outcome and another positive outcome, and so on and so on. And that goes to the meaning of the word appreciate. I love the word appreciate. The word appreciate has 2 meanings. The first meaning of the word is to say thank you. And that's a nice thing to do. Cicero called gratitude the mother of all virtues. I tend to agree with him. But appreciation has a second meaning, and that is to grow in value. And the 2 meanings of appreciation are connected, because when you appreciate the good appreciates.
I like that.
That goes to the essence of creating that upward spiral.
And I think also it has almost a domino effect. I mean, we see it now with these cities taking these moments to clap for our first responders and doctors, and really celebrating the good that is being kind of, being shown throughout this difficult time. And it's good to kind of have those moments of appreciation and have that sense of that there's so much more good in the world even now than we tend to remember.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So moving on to behavior. The first behavior that I would focus on is, again, Dr. Aarti mentioned this, exercise. The kind of research that comes out on exercise is nothing short of mind-boggling. Regular physical exercise, 30 minutes 3 times a week, has the same effect as some of our most powerful psychiatric medication. Now, does this mean that we can get off psychiatric medication and move on to exercise? Of course not. But what it does mean is that we should treat exercise as a real and powerful psychiatric intervention. It releases norepinephrine, serotonin, dopamine. These are your feel-good chemicals in the brain. And, and not to mention, of course, the physical effect that this has. I know that that you often talk about movement as medicine.
Yes.
And that is very important, and it really does function like medicine. Now, exercise is important always. It is especially important in difficult times. I often ask my students in college, I ask them, so when is the time that you're least likely to exercise? And almost to a person, exam period. Why? Because we're so stressed and we don't have time. And the point I make then is that these are the most important times to exercise. I know, sometimes you don't feel like leaving, leaving the house or exercising in the house, even worse. Just do it.
Right. It doesn't have to be so structured, right? It could be dancing in the living room with your kids. It
doesn't matter. Exactly.
It doesn't have to be, lifting weights or anything of that magnitude sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, no. It can be light exercise, basic exercise can make a big difference. When I first looked at the research on exercise, and especially exercise and anxiety, exercise and depression, and I saw the data, I said to myself, wow, exercising is like taking an antidepressant. But when I looked closer at the data and understood what's going on here, I realized it's not exactly right. It's not that exercising is like taking an antidepressant. It's rather that not exercising is like taking a depressant. Why? Because we weren't made to be sedentary. We were made to move, to hunt, to gather, to bring the water from the water hole. Today, with our modern luxuries, and especially today, social isolation, we're not moving. And when we're not moving, we're frustrating a need, and it leads to being a depressant. So all we're doing when we're exercising, we're going back to our normal natural state of well-being. The next intervention in terms of action is spend time with people you care about and who care about you. So some of you may be familiar with the by now quite famous Harvard study. And what they did there was they looked at Harvard students, 18-year-old students back in the 1930s, and they looked at also their community around Harvard, and they followed them for 75 years. So, by the end, most of them were no longer alive. But what they asked, they asked many questions, but at the end, after 75 years, they asked the following question. What is the number one predictor of happiness? So by that point, they had millions, as you can imagine, millions of data points over 75 years, physiological, psychological, environmental data. What best predicts happiness? The clear answer, the winner, relationships. Quality time we spend with people we care about and who care about us. And by the way, it didn't really matter who those people were, meaning it could be a romantic partner, it could be family, it could be friends, colleagues we love, but it's about quality time. They asked the second question, what is the best predictor of physical health? And of course, there were many predictors of physical health, exercise, diet, and so on. Number one predictor, quality time you spend with people you care about and who care about you. This is always important to spend time, whether ideally face-to-face, but in times of trouble, via Zoom. That's okay. But It's always important. It's especially important in difficult times. In the words of Francis Bacon, 400 years ago or so, friendship doubles joys and cuts griefs in half. Today we have the very clear evidence to back this assertion. Moving on to the last of the ABCs, cognition. I spoke about earlier when we were talking about distraction. Distraction is about keeping it real, because what we see through the media is not the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. It's not a mirror of what is actually going on. What the media does is it doesn't mirror, it accentuates. In other words, rather than being a looking glass, it's a magnifying glass. So what we're seeing, what we're exposed to constantly is a distorted perspective, a distorted view of reality. And what we need to do is to basically make it real again, gain a real perspective. And in the world, there are many good things happening. Now, yes, there are also very troubling and tragic things happening, of course. At the same time, we should get the real view of reality, because if we don't, if we get a distorted view, our mind affects our bodies affect our mind. We enter a downward spiral. You know what I've been doing over the past few weeks? I noticed a couple of weeks ago that I've become addicted to the news. You know, I would look at the news and constantly look at the news and look at those numbers and look at those graphs, and they look terrible. And I stopped. So yes, I do open the news, which I don't normally do, first thing in the morning, to see if there are any things that I should be aware of. And then I go into work. And I'm in front of the computer, and I prohibit myself from opening the news until lunchtime again. And again, it's more than I usually do, but I do it. And then once again, but there are hours during the day when I listen to music, one form of distraction. When I watch movies, great time to binge, great time to indulge in your favorite comedy. I don't know what yours is. Mine is The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Whatever it is, great time for these healthy distractions. Learn. You know, these are great times to learn. My wife, Tammy, just sent me a message with a link to 450 courses from Ivy League universities. That's just from Ivy League universities. There are thousands of great courses out there that you can indulge in. What a privilege to do that. And on this note, as I talk about learning, I would also like to invite you, if you're on this call, to be a guest on a course that I'll be teaching starting next week, and it will be for free for your members of your foundation.
Thank you. We could not thank you.
And you'll get an email about this later, where I'll talk much more about the science of happiness and how we can apply it throughout our lives, and certainly in difficult times. And then finally, frame positively. Shakespeare wrote once, "Nothing was good or bad, but thinking makes it so." Shakespeare was obviously very smart. I disagree with him here. I think he's taken this too far. But what I do agree with is that it is possible to frame things differently. It is possible to improve our lot through framing, or at least partial framing. I'll give you an example of one of my favorite studies. So this is Joe Tomaka. What he did was he brought people in who had documented test anxiety. So whenever they were given a test, anxiety levels skyrocket. Very much what's happening now to many people in terms of anxiety levels. Brought them in, divided them randomly into two groups. Group number one, business as usual. Why do they feel so, why is it so difficult for them to take exams? Because they perceive it as a threat to their self-concept, a threat to who they are. So that's group one, business as usual. They took the test. Group two, before taking the test, he said, why don't you look at this test as a challenge rather than a threat? Challenge rather than a threat. One word, changed. As a result of this change in one word, from a threat to a challenge, their cortisol, stress hormone, levels went down. Anxiety went down. they actually performed better on the test than they normally would as a result of this small change. So we can, with relatively minor changes, change the way we perceive a situation.
I saw something recently that said, don't think of it as so much being quarantined to your home, but being on a home retreat. So just really framing that, yes, we are safe home. We're not stuck in our houses, but we're home safe, and we're doing our best to stay safe and making the most out of it. So I think that's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
Exactly. Or as an opportunity to learn and grow, or an opportunity to, get to know our partners or our family, or no less important, ourselves a little bit better. I mean, there are things that we can frame more positively. So I want to end with one brief story. This is taken from Dan Millman, from his book, The Path of the Peaceful Warrior. Dan Millman. He tells the story of Sam. Sam is a construction worker, a builder. Every day, Sam goes to the construction site, and every day at noon, they all break for lunch, all the builders, and Sam takes out his lunchbox. Out of the lunchbox, he takes out a sandwich. He looks at it and says, "Oh no, not peanut butter and jelly sandwich again." Day in and day out, complaining about, "Oh no, not peanut butter and jelly sandwich again," until finally one of his coworkers looks over at him and says, "Sam, stop complaining already. Just tell your wife to make you another sandwich." To which Sam responds, "My wife? I'm not married. I make my own sandwiches." Now, I like this story because very often we make our own sandwiches. We not always, again, reality, throws things at us. Not always great, of course. But very often we make our own sandwiches. And one of the way that we can make better sandwiches is to think about the ingredients that we bring in. And what I've done, over the past few minutes, and what Dr. Aarti has done, has been to share some of the ingredients that lead to more resilience. For example, giving yourself the permission to be human, allowing any and all emotions to flow through you. It's about expressing gratitude, even for the small things, so that you can start an upward spiral. Exercise regularly, move. There are so many great online programs where you can get your fix of daily exercise at home while being in one place. Investing in the number one predictor of both happiness and health. Distracting yourself some with comedy, with music, with conversation, whatever works. And finally, where possible, to frame positively. Now, many people have talk about the idea that things happen for the best. Whether they're religious or not, things happen for the best. And I must say, I don't fully subscribe to that. I don't think things always happen for the best. But what I do think, what I know based on a great deal of research, is that while things don't always happen for the best, some people make the choice to make the best of things that happen. Things do not necessarily happen for the best, but you can choose to make the best of things that happen. Tonight is every night. I'm going to be writing down things for which I'm grateful. And one of the things that I'm most certainly going to write down is about HNF and the opportunity that I had to spend a little bit of time with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are just as grateful to have you be part of this and to help spread, your message and all of the important things that we should be implementing into our lives and remembering to do during all of this chaos, and just to kind of find those moments of stillness and peace, and really grow from that. And I think as people with disabilities, sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we've been able to accomplish and how strong and resilient we are because of this disability, not in despite of it. So I implore everybody to just really remember how much you've been able to overcome, and that because you have CMT or you have any type of disability, you are adaptable. Your life is all about adapting to all of the challenges that we face every day. So this is just a different form of that, but nonetheless, something that I think we can all make the best out of. So thank you so much. Did we have any questions, or Dr. Neve, did you have anything to
No,
add?
I just remember, I know now why Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar's class was probably the most popular.
Absolutely.
Did such a great job too. So I wanted to thank both of them. It was very, very good.
Yes.
And do we have time for questions from those who want to do that through a different?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions about the course information, and Dr. Aarti is going to be offering a half-hour consultation as well. So we're going to be following up with an email with the links for the course and Dr. Aarti's information. And also, in regards to connecting, we're having a Zoom party of sorts on Tuesday, where we're going to be having these weekly Zoomathons, where we'll all be hopefully on camera and see each other face to face and connecting and taking part in, things like exercise, a freestyle exercise session, or we're also going to be having a pet happy hour. Everybody's going to be, bringing their pets on. So we want to really also encourage connection within the CMT community. Not everybody has somebody they can talk to that can identify, can really know what they're going through. So we want to enhance that as much as possible. So we encourage everybody to go to hnf-cure.org. You'll see it on the homepage as it scrolls through. Our Zoomathon page is on there, and it's free to join, and we'd love to see everybody on there as well. I think we did have a question for Dr. Aarti on the cat therapy, and maybe she could tell us a little bit more about that. I'm not sure if if the audio is working. We can try and, oh, she's calling through, okay. Hi, Dr. Aarti.
Hi. I think I had to leave because of the, next speaker. But Coping Cat is a therapy for anxiety for adolescents. It's very commonly used, and you can buy the Coping Cat workbook online. And it helps you with coping skills. It helps you find skills that work for adolescents. And every time they assess the situation, they figure out what skills are best for them, and then they, review, did those skills help? And if they did, they continue those skills. And if not, then they try new skills. So that's what the Coping Cat is. So.
Great. Yeah, I love that. So basically everybody kind of has their own way of coping with challenges. So this is kind of an evaluation of what way works best for them, and then they can kind of move forward with that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's mostly for adolescents and anxiety, that have anxiety.
Okay.
So, yes.
Thank you so much for answering that.
No problem.
We had some other questions here. Yes, we're going to be sending a link. And also, Dr. Tal has a few books available on the subject of happiness. If anybody wants to just search his name on Amazon, I know there's a good amount of his books on there. And we got a lot of gratitude coming through from Amy. Thank you so much for sharing your time and insight. Very informative. Thank you so much from Cheryl and a few others. So thank you again. And with that, I think we'll probably wrap up and let everybody know. We'll be sharing that information once again in email. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Someone just came in with a question. Do we want to answer that, or you want to do that?
Oh, I didn't see that one. Did you?
It's an under open.
Oh, yes. Okay.
As a person with chronic illness, I'm in several support groups for my illness. How do you filter out and avoid the effects? Is that the one? Did you ask? Is that the filter out and avoid the effects of negativity of others during this time? Does anyone want to answer that?
Dr. Aarti, were you able to hear that question?
No, because
Okay.
I think it was very blurry. So
No
if we can
worries.
repeat that for everybody.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Elle asked, as a person with a chronic illness, I'm in several support groups for my illness. How do you filter out and avoid the effects of negativity of others during this time?
So maybe I can start.
Sure.
The key is, it's impossible to filter out entirely, unless we lock ourselves up or literally, or stick our head in the sand, and we don't want to do that. Some negativity is okay. The key is, again, to have a realistic perspective, meaning to have both. It's okay to have some negativity as long as we also counter that
Right.
with gratitude, or with people who are more positive and more empowering. So as long as we have the and rather than just one or the other, then we should be fine. And if we feel that there's too much negativity, then just distract ourselves, get ourselves away from places that don't make us feel good. That's legitimate always, certainly legitimate now.
Yeah, and just to take kind of inventory of the support group itself, is it making you feel better after you attend and participate, or is it making you feel worse? If it's making you feel worse, it's probably not something that you should continue.
Then it's not a support group.
Right, exactly. Did you have anything to add to that, Dr. Aarti?
Yeah, no, exactly what Dr. Shahar said. Tal Ben-Shahar said, beautifully well put. And I loved your philosophy and the speech that was given. And like I was saying, like everything everyone's been saying, just surround yourself around positive people. And that's very important with a chronic illness, is to make sure you're around good energy and good friends. You have limited time and energy anyway, so you want to be around good energy and good people, and you try your best to keep that on the low. And like was said, distracting yourself is very important too. And like you said, you can't stop that from happening, especially if it's a good support group, but definitely keep it on the low. But if it's too much, definitely find another support group. So yes, it's like what everyone's saying. Yes.
Yeah,
so.
and I think Elizabeth Gilbert spoke about this yesterday. She was on a live webinar, I think, with Ted, and she said that you can still, the difference between empathy and compassion. You can still feel compassion for someone going through something upsetting or challenging, but you don't necessarily have to absorb those emotions, which is more about the empathy side of it, right? So we can still be compassionate for people, but we don't have to absorb that as our own reality necessarily. So I hope that helps answer your question. And we had a question, or I guess a comment. What a beautiful world if children would learn this empowerment early on. They can say that is not appropriate or simply ouch. I'm assuming she's speaking in regards to bullying and things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, that's something that we try to encourage, and I'm sure any parent with a disability, I think that's one of the silver linings around being a parent with a disability, is that your children grow up more sensitive to others with differences and disabilities themselves. So hopefully they are, ending that cycle. All right. So I think without further ado, we have all our questions here answered. And thank you so much. We look forward to attending your course, Dr. Tal and Aarti, Dr. Aarti. Again, thank you so much for your insight and your offer for the consultations. And Dr. Neve is always so supportive. And I hope when things calm down, everybody will be able to kind of see you in person at the clinic, or just be in touch with you, and hopefully we'll be able to reschedule our Movement is Medicine Summit soon when all of this is done. So
absolutely, I hope so. Hopefully, if we reschedule, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar and Dr. Aarti Jerath can both come if they want to. And we are having medical appointments in person for our urgent patients. Just FYI, for those things.
okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Speak to you soon. Take care.
Thank you.